Hello everyone, my name is Bridget and I'm back. Today we're going to be talking about the journey of spiritual awakening, the journey of it, because however long you've been on it, maybe super long time, not long at all, there's a lot to it, and this will be inclusive of life. There's a lot to life. There's ups and downs, there's challenges, there's amazing heightened states and heightened moments, and how do we navigate all of these different things inside of us, happening outside of us over time? Because I think one of the things in kind of just generally the cultural world is that time is against us in a sense, or I wish I had more time. And I think there's an intelligence to time itself and to cycles and to rhythm. So that's a lot of what we're going to be getting into today. And in tuning into that, it's going to give a greater context to your spiritual awakening process and to your life, to your soul, to your purpose and expression, and the rhythms and cycles we go through for growth and for experience, and the things that come back around that are true to us. So I think it'll really help you navigate life and the awakening journey, and especially what's been happening over the past few years. So that's what we're going to be getting into. Hello, it's been a while, and I'm officially back. And I have finished a cycle, which in this I'm going to be talking about a lot of different stories that have happened as different examples of the greater concept I'm sharing today. And I'm going to share where I've been a bit and why I'm coming back now, but I am here now. And I want to make a couple of announcements before we get too into this, which is you can listen to the podcast version on my Wild and Awake with Bridget Nielsen podcast, because this might be longer form. So feel free to check it out on Spotify or Apple. The links are in the show notes. And then the other thing is I've been pretty in full contact with those on my email list, sharing all kinds of things. And I'm going to be talking about some of what I've been talking about on my emails in this video. So I encourage you to go get on that email list. And when you do, you get a bunch of free stuff. Like I give a lot of free meditations, processes, downloads. So be sure to go join that as well and stay in contact with me as I ebb and flow out of here, but I'm mostly going to be back here in my own timing and rhythm. So those are a couple things. And the other thing is I have a Sedona women's retreat coming up March 22nd through the 26th. So excited because I'm very in that receptive place, and I can't wait to share the things that I've learned in these past years with the women that are available to show up for that. So click the link and go reserve your spot for that as well. Okay. Now it's time to sit back and relax and just soak into this space, into this moment. This is my kind of newer pace. It's my podcast pace, which feels really good and true to me. The quick need to get it in for YouTube for short attention span just doesn't resonate with me. So we need to sit into this, because I feel that actually going deep is one of the antidotes to our cultural issues in this moment, and will give greater richness to our souls. So that's what we're going to do. So there's the whole phrase, it's not about the destination, it's all about the journey, right? It's all about the journey, it's not about the destination. These phrases exist for a reason, but I think what the journey is not often talked about. And I haven't understood it in many ways, the journey of life, the journey of spiritual awakening, the journey of personal development, whatever it is, because I haven't been alive long enough to understand it. And that's what I've realized too, is with time comes truly experience. And what comes with this experience is the understanding and the true experience, the experiential realization of how we are rhythmic, cyclical beings. We are biological beings. As far as I've checked, I haven't gotten anything yet inserted. And because we're biological beings, we work on the template of the greater biology of Earth. and the greater celestial bodies of the sun and the moon and the universe and the stars. So we work and live within these rhythms. We live within cycles. Those of you who are into astrology and such, you know this, right? It's cycles. And these cycles, there's lots of them running at the same time. You can think of like a clock, the interior of old clocks, not digital clocks, but like the old school ones. And they have all these different like small little things that are moving, and then they have big ones that are moving, and they're all moving intricately interwoven to create this clock, this timing. And within us, we have these small cycles and we have bigger cycles. So all of us work on the rhythm of, say, like the sun comes up every day, thank God, and the moon goes around and does its thing every 28 days. So there's all these cycles of the 365. There's so many cycles of nature that are happening, and the nature is within us because we're biological beings. And so especially for women, but for men too, we work with the rhythms of the seasons. We are seasonal beings. We are nature. And so the more that we realize this, not only of being cyclical beings connected to the rhythms of nature, which just that realization and that movement towards synchronizing with that part of ourselves and really letting ourselves move with the rhythms of nature will mend many of our challenges in every way, mentally, emotionally. And so that's one of the invitations, is how can we sync more with our internal natures, which are reflected by the nature all around us? That's going to help so many things. I'll give a couple of examples right now, and then I'll keep going. But an example being, in our fast-paced, chaotic, psychotic culture, it would have us like sprint until we die. I think it's the analogy of, at this point, people do like 3 marathons in a row. It's like, Did we not miss the original story that the guy dropped dead at the end of the first marathon? Like, maybe this rhythm is not best with our biology. So the idea is it doesn't have our best interest at heart. And so what creates vitality? What creates inspiration? What creates life force, rejuvenation in the long term? Because the culture's like ready to, kill itself very quickly. And I'm for long term. I'm for longevity. I have that Taoist philosophy. I want to be like, okay, what needs to be in balance for 120 years of life or 200 years of life? And so to do that, it is coming back into harmony with our bodies, our beings. And so in this rhythmic cycle that we can learn from nature, we start to realize that when we take, for instance, winter, and we really hibernate and we really renew and we really gestate and reflect and be in this deep space, then when spring comes, we have the energy, we have the vitality to move and sprout forth and to blossom. And then we have that full capacity to be that summer energy. And then we're going to wane. We're going to wane like the waning moon. The leaves are going to fall, which gives that nutrient density to the soil for us to go deep within and then have that nutrients or life force to then emerge again in the spring. So that's one example of so many cycles that exist. And when we really take this, it really works. And I'll give a female example because there's like this, it's the same thing, it's the same concept, but there's this fear of like, oh, if on my moon time I actually don't work out or I actually rest, then I'm going to miss out and not be as productive as other people or as productive as, say, men, or for instance. And I've found through experience that that's not the case at all. Is when we're in alignment and when we give ourselves all of the different energies we're needing, then when we need to come forth and fruit or take action or create, we have everything we need. But if we're at this constant psychotic pace, then we can't, right? So that's just one example of what I'm talking about. And I'm going to go back into the spiritual journey analogy. But working with the rhythms is one of the major aspects of the journey and making it much easier. It's like, okay, let's see if I can just come up with an analogy off the cuff. It's like just walking straight up a cliff if you're not moving with, say, the switchbacks of the ebb and flow of the path. It's like there's a path that's challenging, but it's not crazy challenging. Or you can just like go climb the rock face and like have it be super challenging, right? So we get to choose kind of the path. And one of the ways to make it easier is to go in cycle, in tandem with the rhythms of yourself and with the rhythms of nature. Now, that's the rhythms of nature. You have the rhythms of your soul. You have the rhythms of yourself. You have the rhythms of your life themes that come up and ebb and flow. And I don't know if you felt this yourself. This might be that at certain times of life you've been, even if it's a short term, like you had a very extroverted 1 month, or you've been extroverted and then all of a sudden you're very inward, for maybe a short time or a long time. And the thing that's interesting about these cycles, we're just going to go with inward, outward for a moment as an example, is that, again, culture, the pace, wants us to hurry these processes, right? And we think, and when I was thinking about that, and it's like, okay, can you hurry up and rest? Or can you hurry up and like get through that thing you're processing so that you can move on, right? Can you overcome that trauma? Come on, like get with it, right? And it's like, no, that's not how it works. That's definitely not how it works in deep personal work, especially when we're releasing certain levels of trauma or shadow within ourselves. Those pieces take time, and that they need the space, they need the energy, they need the safety to fully release, to unthaw, to unnumb. And if you hurry it, it'll turn into fight or flight and it'll not be pretty. So it's one of these things where there's this idea, and again, I'm glad that I'm pointing to my head for those of you listening to the podcast version, because it's a heady thing. When we're listening to our bodies, which is another key component on the journey, is listening to the body. When we're listening, we realize what we need. And so that's a big part of it, is not listening through the head or listening to those that are using their heads, but really coming back into the body. And this can start to be controversial in this spiritual world because it's so much about like ascending or going up through the crown or leaving. It's like the only way out is through, and it is through this vessel, and it is through this biology that is extraordinary. And the more that we listen and tune into it on the journey, the easier it gets. So that you're seeing these little breadcrumbs of treats along the way that I'm sharing right now. But it really is about tuning in and listening to the body and listening to what is truly needed, and actually having the radical courage to let yourself, to give that to yourself. So an example for me is last year, as you kind of knew on YouTube, I didn't like say too much about it, but I think I said it more on my podcast. I'm like, okay guys, I'm going into some deep, super deep, really scary, crazy, deep personal work. And it was so intense that I needed to actually stop doing content creation for the first time in like 7 to 10 years, because I needed all of the capacity of every aspect of my soul to do this work. So I was like, okay, and it'll probably take like a month or two, right? Like in my head, it's like, yeah, I'll move through that quickly. I move quickly through things. Oh yes, sure, Bridget. So I thought, and sometimes it's kind of nice to think something's going to be one way and then it turns out another, because if we knew what it would really be, like, would we do it? So it's kind of nice to have those like wishful thinking in a sense. But it ended up taking me a full almost a year of not creating content here, going away, to do this deep work that I needed to do. And what that also gave me, what I was doing a lot of things within the year. And I was doing a lot of like work still, but it was different. which is part of the point, is that other parts of me were like, oh, I have not been watered in so long because you've been on here with them doing this, talking, that we need nurturance. And so in that space, it came to the end of a cycle of my extroversion. It came to the end of the cycle of me talking and expressing a lot, say like publicly and through this. And it was like, oh, I really need to be heard and listened to in a very quiet, gentle, and deep way. And so that's what was needed. And I consider myself generally more extroverted. But I was like, will I ever talk again, like on a podcast or on a video? Because it was so deep and I needed so long to really rekindle and have heard quietude and silence within myself. So that was a cycle of silence that was needed. And it was way more than I thought that I needed. And so the invitation again is to this timing. There's a certain timing of what we think it should be, where we think we should be at a certain time. Like, oh, I've been on my awakening journey for this long, or like I've been doing this work or this business for this long. I should be at this place. That's not what it's necessarily about. And there's an intelligence to the timing. It's like, well, is there? And it's like, well, can you rush the gestation of a baby? The 10 months it takes for a baby to grow. It's like, hurry up in there. It's like, it's needed. There's a reason. And Steiner talks about, I think it was Steiner that talks about how, for instance, if you're eating plants, you're taking in the energy imprint of that plant's life. So like lettuce, like 30 to 40 days or something. I don't know the lifespan of lettuce. And if you're eating like a cow or something, you're taking in the few years or however long that animal's lived. And so with that, you're taking in more information from that animal, and that celestial energy is coming in, that earth energy is coming in, several cycles are coming in. And so you're getting more because of that extra cycles and imprint that's there. So it's the same thing where, for instance, a baby's in the womb for, again, 9 to 10 months. It needs that much time to be in this intermediary phase before it births. Same with the butterfly analogy. It's in the cocoon. It's in that chrysalis of pressure for a certain amount of time. It needs that amount of time to then be able to have the strength, the depth, the fortitude, all the different things for whatever it's experiencing to then become a butterfly. And it's the same for us. Like, we might need that level of rest. We might need, if we've been resting or being complacent or just being too perfectionist for a long time, we might need to go work our butts off for a while and to do that and to like exert, right? So there's these different cycles of ebb and flow. So as I'm sharing this, tune in to the different aspects of your life and be like, where am I in these cycles? And it'll tell you, like, your body, your emotions, your relationships, your job. It'll tell you where it's at, and it'll be like, yeah, I'm like at the end of the line, or I'm almost complete. I'm just still not quite there, or I'm needing to start a new cycle, right? For a long time, another example, most of my spiritual awakening, I wasn't very physical. Sure, I'd do some yoga, sure, I'd do some hiking, but I wasn't really like physical in my body. And then that cycle came to an end, and it was like, I need my body again. I need my body to feel strong and resilient, because that makes all the other parts of me feel strong and resilient. So last year I became what my current partner would actually call me, is a bodybuilder. And I became super strong and was rock climbing, and I summited all these mountains. I summited like 8 mountains in the Rockies. And then this year, I hiked the Grand Canyon 3 times. And it's worth telling a little bit of this journey because it talks about the journey, right? And the Grand Canyon hike that I was going on is about 19 miles in one day, 8,000 plus elevation gain. This is a beast. You go in before the sunrise and you come out, if you're lucky, depending on who you're with, at sunset. And you only stop short amounts of time. You're always on that journey. And this is a good analogy because there's certain times in life, whether it's just the challenges you're facing with work, with kids, with relationships, where you're like, oh my God, is it ever going to end? And I've been in that position lots of times in life, where it's like the grief of a breakup, and like where I was crying every day. I'm like, will this ever end? I'm like, it might not, And same with this last year when I was in silence. I was like, will this ever end? Will I be able to speak again? And one thing, again, through time that creates this level of experience and wisdom, and that's why I'm kind of delivering it back to you and just kind of and reminding you that, yes, these things are cycles. It comes back around. The things that are true and who we are will come back around. And so you can count on it. You don't know when per se, but it will come back around if it's true for you and who you are. And so in that, this too shall pass. And I think that it's really nice to know too in these cycles of sometimes challenge where you're like, oh my God, this too shall pass. It is so true. It's the way that it is, and it will change. And in those moments of challenge, so is an analogy on the Grand Canyon hike, I was in challenge. By the time I got down to the river, which is only 8 miles or so, my feet the first time felt like they were going to fall off. Like I was like, my feet literally cannot take another step. And I've got 11 miles or plus out of this thing, all vertical. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And I'm sure you've been in that position in life. Like, how am I going to do this with the bills? Or how am I going to do this with my kid or this partner or my like internal anxieties or, whatever it is. And in those moments when you're on the journey, in the cycle of challenge, whatever the given thing is to freaking learn from it and to relish in it, because it will not be there forever. And it seems counterintuitive because you're like, I want to get out of this. And it's like, I want to escape this. But like, how can you lean in and make sure that you soak up every last bit of that challenge, of that adversity, of whatever that thing is teaching you? Because one, you want to make sure that you don't repeat it again, right? So you really want to learn the lesson. And then also, these deep levels of challenge create the most expansion. That's crazy, right? Because it's like, no, wait, I thought like being high and meditating does. It's like, yeah. The transformation, that alchemy, right? That shift is actually what creates the most transformation, the most expansion, the most awakening. And so we really want to be as conscious and present for it as possible to the best of our ability. Sometimes we have to cope. Sometimes we have to do what we have to do because we don't maybe have the capacity to even handle it all. But as best as you can. And this creates the deepest, richest soil. This creates soul. Because there's a difference between like creating more spirit and then more soul. And developing our soulfulness is just as necessary. They go in tandem. I'll do a whole conversation about this, but developing spirit is critically necessary. Developing soul is. And this creates soulfulness, and it creates this depth and richness that creates capacity. It's the texture, it's the color, it's the like fertile soil of life. And so it's very important to relish in this. I was just talking to one of my girlfriends who's 19 and she had her first love and they broke up. And she was like, oh my God, like, I'm going to die. And I'm like, no, you're not, but I know how you feel. And she's like, will I ever like love again? And like, how do I even handle this? And I'm like, well, the thing that you have to remember as you're going through this is, thank God I can feel this much. Thank God I can love this deeply, right? And so that's part of it, is like, thank God I have these capacities, because so much of like life or challenge can like shut us down. But to continue to feel through these things is part of what brings this richness and depth. So very much so utilizing the cycles of challenge is necessary, so you don't beget more challenge, so you learn from it. And then also so you get richness to bring back to the higher states and to express and to share in a beautiful way. Like, thank God I've experienced these challenges so then I can share with you to enjoy yours, for example. So really relish in it is one of the things that I have to say about that. The other side to that coin and cycle is that there's the cycles of celebration, right? There's the cycles of certain parts of life that are just incredible, where you're like, it doesn't get better than this, or at least I don't think it hasn't thus far. Maybe it will, but like, this is incredible, right? Whether it's, for me, for instance, it was the like height of the Sedona community and my friendships the past 2 years. And it was just absolutely incredible. Some of that most heightened, connected, communal, intimate dynamics of a community like I've ever experienced, and with friendships. And that has like since waned, because a lot of us have moved or different things have happened. And my friend was really grieving that. And I'm like, I get it. And so in those moments of celebration, what we can do is really be present to them and be grateful, and really, again, relish the good parts where we're like, yes, like, this is so beautiful, and just really take that in. And then when it does shift and maybe that cycle closes and we don't have that anymore, we can always tune back into it, because it is a part of us. And that is part of the gem, part of the gold of time, and part of the gem and part of the gold of experience, is that all of these components, these ebbs and flows, these ups and downs, these challenges, these celebrations, become this incredible tapestry within our etheric body, within our energy system, within our hearts, within our souls, that we can tap back into and access at any time. We become these like, just rich, soulful characters, because, and that's like what we used to praise, the elders for, where you just would sit down and you'd look at like the lines on their face and like the way that their body had like settled into contortion, and just be like, God, like, you're beautiful. Like, tell me what did you experience to become this way? And like, you hear their stories, and it's just a life well lived, a journey walked. And so if we can begin to grasp that now and recapitulate or honor in the present moment, or at least take in the things, in the previous months or the previous few years that have happened, so that we can incorporate them and take those next step forwards with more consciousness, more gratitude for the high moments and gratitude for the low moments, then everything's better. It's like we're collecting these amazing little precious stones and gems and yummy things on the trail, where it's like, oh, this is just like amazing, and we're adding to our knapsack of tools of experience, so then we can pass those on to other people, for instance. And these components live in us. One of the things in the Toltec tradition that I learned is, for instance, one of the things you need on the path is energy, because according to the Toltecs, you can't do any healing or any lucid dreaming if you don't have energy. And so I would say you can't really do anything if you don't have energy. We need vitality. We need life force. And so some of the practices that they do, that I have in my Soul 8 Collective membership, is they imbue their energy fields with the different phases of the moon, the different phases of the sun, with different components, and they imprint them so that it's in our etheric body. So in that moment when it's, you're like, you are maybe tired, or maybe it's not a good timing astrologically or in whatever way, and you need or say a woman's bleeding or something on her moon time, but you need to create something, or you need to give life to something. You have the energy already imprinted of, say, the full moon in your energy field, so you can draw upon that and boom. Like, you don't have to wait till the full moon to do it. The full moon lives in you. You are the full moon. As well as you are these experiences you've had. You are the celebration you can draw upon from the amazing moments that you've had, or you are those challenges that you've overcome. And this is medicine, right? This is the medicine that lives in us. And again, going back to the cycles of nature, the more that we become that and truly let ourselves merge with the rhythms of the seasons, with the elemental energies, the more that they're imbued in our energetic fields, that then is a living energy within us. That's the whole airbender, thing, where we are the air. So then we're an airbender. We are the earth. We are all of these things. And so it really comes to this place of honoring the journey. And I think realizing how beautiful these different components are, from this illustration that I've shared, where it's like, oh yeah, maybe there is something good about the challenges or about the celebration, and realizing that things do come back around that are meant to, and that there is an intelligence to time and to timing. I think that's been so negatively, slashed in our world, especially time means aging. Time means I don't have enough time, or all these things that time is to blame. And I think if we come into right relationship with time, we can actually see that it is our friend, and it is our ally, and it is intelligent. And in its intelligence, there's a timing to things. And we're in this kind of instant gratification, 2-day Amazon Prime kind of world. And so if it's hey, Ascended Master hasn't, I haven't become an Ascended Master yet, it's well, yeah, spiritual awakening's not Amazon Prime, it's gonna take some time. Or there's certain processes within us that must take root, or must be pulled out, or must be transformed, or must be cultivated before this certain thing can come into our lives. And I think that that's one of the nuanced pieces of wisdom that isn't talked about, say, in the law of attraction, is it's well, I instantly want the person of my dreams to appear. Why can't I have that relationship? I want it now. It's well, if that person actually showed up now, are you actually ready? Would it actually work? Have you cultivated and shed, the certain traumas? Have you opened yourself to receiving and balancing the certain patterns that you've had in previous relationships? Have you done the work to meet that? And I'm speaking from personal experience with this one, where I met my current partner 2 years ago, somewhat briefly. And then both of us were not ready with the things that we had to unfold and move within ourselves to even be together for 1.5 years. So there's something to timing, and there's an intelligence to it. And so I think really trusting in that, and also simultaneously doing the work, taking the actions necessary to do the transformational work in whatever way, and to continue to show up in life, but showing up from the space that is authentic to the cycle that you're needing on a deeper mind, body, soul, spirit level. So if you're needing more introversion, that's fine. And you can still show up from a space that might be internal, or it's not quite time to emerge and now it is. But being careful with yourself, because there can be moments where it's too complacent or where you can justify overdoing it. So that's like a tricky space to be. And in those moments, you can realize that you're not actually in a cycle of nature or your internal nature, because the thing is if we were truly in balance with ourselves and in rhythm with the nature expression, is that we wouldn't need like so long to renew like our bodies and our energies. We could be in balance much more easily. And if we get back onto the cycle of nature's rhythm, then that can happen more easily. And it's important to note, I heard at the same time, that we are also sometimes recovering from generations that haven't had the capacity to process certain things. So that can be something that might be coming up as well that's important to consider and be kind to. The last piece that I wanted to share on the journey itself of awakening in these different cycles, is that we can be at different times, like we can be like hiking through bramble, and like get poison ivy. And then at other times it can just start raining and you're like, dang it. And then other times you can be on a mountaintop and we're looking at a delicate little flower or a stream and experience God. And so there definitely is an ebb and flow where sometimes you experience the miraculous and sometimes it's shitty. And those things will pass and they'll return, because I think that's one of the things I know, at least a lot of people on the spiritual path and me for many years was like, can't I stay in the ecstatic? And it's like, no, you got to hit like these other rhythms and these other depths, which then bring it back up again, and then the more that we open, the more that we expand, the longer we can actually stay in these expanded states. And so the last piece is stages of life. So we have our own soul journey, we have our own spiritual journey, and then we have the stages of life. And these are universal in a sense. People will do them different ways, right? Because we are all different. We get to uniquely choose our own paths. But generally, we're working through different levels of initiation, again, through our biology of the initiation into puberty, the initiation into adulthood, the initiation into motherhood or fatherhood or into creatorhood, and then the initiation into elderhood. So there's also stages of life. And that's so important to, one, relish the stage of life that you're in, like really utilize it. Really make the most of whatever that stage of life is, because it will change, it will end. And then some people try and kind of like stay in a stage of life like too long. I don't know if you've seen that, where it's like, okay, you're still being a kid, like it's time to kind of move into the next one. It's like, no. And so really, if we utilize the ones that we've been in and we make the most of them and we learn all the lessons and we take all of that within us, then we'll be ready for the next one. And it's not exclusionary. It's very inclusive, where we take the next one with us and include it. So as we move through these stages of life, I think it's like there is a mourning, there is a loss in a sense as we transition through these initiatory gates. And this is through the stages of life, like as men and women. But also there's different stages of life that we move through, in our spiritual practice or in certain parts of us that are being expressed and not expressed. For so long doing this work that I've loved so much and like sharing with you, I put down my art for a decade, for a very long time. And I was like, darn, like I really love that part of me. And it straight up wasn't available because there was just so much needed for this. And now it's come back around. Like that cycle's come back around. I'm like, I never thought this cycle would come back around like to the level that it is. And it's like, here it is. So honoring these things come back around and really realizing that as we hit these different stages, which I think is one of the antidotes to the fear of, say, like aging or time is that it's like, oh no, like as I hit this like next stage of age or hit this next stage of responsibility in life, we're still all of those other parts. We're still a kid. I'm still a kid all the time. I'm still a maiden all the time. We're all of these things. And that's when you see super embodied, holistic, say, elders, and you're like, oh my God, you're so much fun. You're so cool. And you're like so badassly fierce and clear and wise and conscious, like at the same time too. So we can include all of these. And I think that helps relieve, kind of the stressors or staying in one phase too long, as well as just really making sure to live out everything. And that's where it gets tricky too, because culturally it's like, you want to live out everything? Everything is a very slippery slope. It's like, well, live out everything that's genuine for you. For me, like by the time I was 23, I was done with like, say, alcohol. It wasn't even I was like, I'm so done with this. I never even really wanted to start it. If I had more like self-empowerment at that time, I wouldn't have ever even done it. But I was like, I'm done. And it's like, well, most people are like, well, you're only 23. I'm like, I'm done. So it's like, what are you done with and what are you not done with? And like making sure to complete those pieces so that you can move through that cycle to the next stage of initiation on the path of life as well. And then two, I think as we move into these like latter initiatory stages of life, there's not a lot of modeling, like, because the ones that are the most celebrated are the first ones. And so looking for models outside, but also looking within and being like, who do I want to become in this like stage of life or like through this responsibility? And that's been really exciting to define it for yourself. And so to consciously, enter into these things proactively, I think is really helpful and eases the challenge of moving through these cycles. So these are the different pieces. And the thing that I'll say to close that I learned from one of my bosses when I was in my early 20s, she had this model that was about cycles, actually. Just happened to pop into my head right now, is that there's the beginning of a cycle. You begin something, right? It could just be an activity, right? You begin an activity, then you continue on it, maybe not, and you are in the gestation or creation phase of it, and then there's a completion. And those are the phases of a cycle. And so sometimes if we start something, move to the middle of something, and then don't finish, start, middle, don't finish, start, middle, don't finish, it can get harder to want to start. And so we really need to make sure that each part of a cycle is nourished. And so if starting is something that's hard for you, like enlist support for that. Or if finishing is something hard for you, enlist support for that. And that's like a whole other subject, but I'm all for enlisting support from other people that are really proficient in that particular category to like help pave the energy template of how to do that, or who can support you in that so that you can really work with the end of a cycle. And this is with everything, right? The end of like a relationship or the beginning of a relationship, like if that's something that you have challenge with, like get support for that or whatever the thing is, so that you can enter into or complete the things that you are meant to. They're critically necessary for yourself, for your own soul growth, and for those around you. It's so helpful, you being your full self. And so those are some of the pieces for today. So thank you so much for listening. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I wore a sweater. I'm so hot. That's why I've got my extra red cheeks right now, because I'm so hot in this room. I thought I would be chilly. And I'm heated up with excitement having spoken to you. I would really be curious if you'll share in the comments, or if you're on listening through the podcast. Either way, you can comment on YouTube or you can comment through Telegram. I'll have the link. I have a Telegram channel so that we can talk, more honestly with each other, and to share what would be most helpful for me to talk about and cover. Because historically, I've kind of feel like I've been an entertainer of spiritual excitement onto these some certain subjects. And at this point, I just want to do things that are helpful, not maybe like, sensationally like dopamine hits. So what do you need the most help with? What would you like me to cover? I would be very curious to know. I have my own ideas because I'm scouting out in the world and being like, oh, we should probably talk about that. Seems like that's something that's up. So I'll continue to do that. Be sure, if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening on the podcast, to check out the podcast I didn't upload on YouTube, which is about AI and how to navigate the world of AI that is already here. So be sure to check out that episode. And again, to be in more constant communication with me, please check out and join my mailing list for a bunch of free goodies. And if you're a lady, biological lady, and want to come to my Sedona Women's Retreat, be sure to click the link and reserve your spot because it's going to be so fun and rich, and we're going to go deep. So thank you so much for watching. Do all the things, click the like, do the subscribe, all the things, leave the 5 stars, and I will see you pretty soon with more content.